everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 4 of Tsurune. We are officially a third of the way through the season. It's kind of crazy, right? Kind of crazy. I feel like we just started this series and we're already like a third of the way through the season. It's very weird, but I've really enjoyed this season so far. I feel like we've gotten to know these characters just enough, and then of course the rest of the season we're going to develop them. But Ryohei last episode, the biggest puppy dog, the biggest Blue's Clues enthusiast, my heart was singing. I was so happy. But I do have a few comments before we start episode 4 that have come from Patreon and YouTube. Non-binary Jutlung noted that at some point in episode 1, apparently it was stated that Kaito and Nanao are cousins. Is that true? I was like, if Nanao and Kaito are cousins, well, that ruins that whole ship. I'm into keeping it in the family, but not like that. So I was like, oh, well, that might ruin that. So that'll be interesting to see. I may have to go back and rewatch episode 1 and see if it's mentioned that they're cousins. That might be, it would make sense. They're childhood friends. They've known each other forever, that they would be related, but and that's why Nanao can be so like pushy with Kaito at times. So that's curious. I'll have to go back and double check that, fact check that, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. NL talked about how the director of this series, Takuya Yamamura, was the director of this show, and this was their debut series. And apparently they had been trained by Isaku Kawanami, who is the director of Free and has been since 2017. So I was like, okay, so the guy directing Tsurune learned from the director of Free. The style and direction is rather similar, so that's where that comes from, but it's different. It's not the same as Free. Tsurune is not the same as Free. No. Totally different vibe, totally different tone. There's not flashy shirtless boys in the OP. Or the ED. Masa is the closest to that, and he's a full-grown man. He can do what he wants. So yeah, there's that. But I thought that was very, very interesting to see the kind of similarities between the two. And then Tommy-sensei noted that I've met Fujiwara. We've seen him. We've not really seen him talk much, but apparently he's voiced by Kensuke Ono. Or Kensho Ono. He's voiced by the same one that does Akutagawa, that does Flock, that does Thorfinn, that does half the characters Thorfinn's Atsushi, that does Canute. He's voiced by, that does Yuri. He's voiced by so many good characters. He's a damn chameleon. And he's voicing this purple-eyed man that surely is not going to pierce my heart with an arrow and drag me back, through this series with it. So thank you, Tommy-sensei, for getting my hopes extremely up for his character. Because usually Kensho Ono, he voices a very, very, very good character. And so I'm really excited for Fujiwara. Am I already shipping him and Minato, even though they've barely been together on screen? Yes. So I don't ship Minato with Seiya. I don't, because I feel like they are more platonic besties that have this broken childhood friendship that they're trying to mend with one another. And that's great. And I love them as best friends, but I just don't get like any type of romantic vibe at all. But Fujiwara is like brooding and mysterious. And I'm all about brooding and mysterious characters. So I'm very excited to see what his character's like. Maybe he won't have a thing for Minato. Minato won't have a thing for him. Who knows? We'll see. So, but yeah. So last episode was all Ryohei's. It was all Ryohei's, and then it was getting Kaito to acknowledge Minato and at least be okay with him being there. And at the very end, we got the plot twist that old Masaki, he's gonna be the coach for the team, because of course he is. Because Tommy-sensei, bless his bones, cannot draw a bow back. I wanted to give him the biggest hug in that moment, be like, it's okay, Tommy-sensei, we'll keep you around. So yeah, I'm excited, y'all. I hope you all are too, but let's not waste any more time. We are going to dive into episode 4 of Tsurune, and we're going to do so here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Why are we ending the episode so soon? I was ready to just find out what was going to happen in the training camp. But of course we have a training camp because it's a sports anime, and even something as unique as Kyudo needs to have a training camp. And I like the idea of the mock tourney. The mock tourney was a lot of fun. I liked the idea that you couldn't, as soon as Tommy-sensei was coming to shoot the bow, I was like, nah, he's going to be amazing, which surprising no one, he was. I was like, of course he was. But yeah, I was like, of course Tommy-sensei is going to be great. So that was not surprising. But I will say, it was kind of cool seeing Tommy-sensei fire the bow, and like in that split moment, he was shaking. They were like, oh, we got it. And then his grip tightens and he focuses, and then Masa getting the bullseye too, which I'm very interested in Masa's character and his brother Rin. They don't look alike at all, right? And maybe if they're brothers, I mean, Masa could be adopted, Rin could be adopted. Their parents could look totally different, right? I can kind of see with the eyes a little bit between them. But yeah, so this episode, Kaito is like head over heels for his mentor. What I liked about this episode was it again does some things that are not traditional like sports anime tropes, and I kind of like that. I like the girls are like, when this episode starts, the girls are like, okay, this guy's hot, but who is he? I feel bad for the girls sometimes because I feel like they just kind of stare off at these group of like hooligans and they're like, why do we have to deal with this? But yeah, Masa cut his hair off. He chopped his hair. I said this in the episode and I stand by it. You can tell that Masa and Tommy are adults because they have a very distinct and set fashion sense. I feel like when you're in high school, you're trying to discover yourself, and so you try and test out lots of things, or you think you have a style, but you haven't quite just got it down. You think you do. When I was in high school, I was like, oh, I've got a style. I've got it pinned down. And now I look back and go, no, I didn't. But I feel like once you're like in your 20s, you kind of start figuring out, you cement your style and how you like it. And I feel like that's what, like, every look that Masa had in this episode, whether it was the denim shirt or the black blazer with the pants and the skinny jeans, it's like he knows exactly what he's doing, and Kiwani is brilliant for animating it, but like Tommy-sensei with his cardigans and his bolo ties, here for it. So an old acquaintance of mine, I'm sure that Tommy-sensei either taught Masa or he knows him from a friend that taught him or whatnot, but I'm sure that they know each other somehow, right? He's been wielding a bow for 15 years. And Masa's just kind of like, oh, don't talk me up and everything. Masa tries to be a little bit humble, right? Masa's not trying to like show off that he's really talented, correct? And so everybody's told that they need to heed his teachings and everything. And he's like, oh, you don't set the bar too high. I'm just this part-time coach. Like, what am I doing? But I love that he like runs the hands and they're like, I'll do my best. And every girl's like, okay, no, we're fine. And every boy on the team is like, no, we're fine. Yeah, what a smooth talker. And I like that Minato's like a moth to the flame. I don't know how I feel about Minato and Masa, because like I said in the reaction, there were people sharing some art in the Discord about Masa and Minato. And for me, it's a little weird because Masa's 23 and these guys are 15? So there's an 8-year difference. And that's not a lot. I get that. But there is a big mental difference between 23 and 15. A huge difference, like in terms of maturity and development and growth, and it's just like, So I don't know if I feel comfortable shipping Masa and Minato right now. They're more like the mentor-mentee. Now, if you told me years later when Minato was 20 and Masa was 28, then maybe I'd be a little bit more on board with it. I'd be like, okay, well, they're technically both adults now. Okay. They have maturity to him, but Minato's very impressionable right now, and you can tell that he and Kaito, they latch onto Masa like a moth to a flame. They're like, oh, like Minato's like, oh, Masa, your hair, and Seiya looks over and I'm kind of like, how do you know his hair was different? Where have you been? What are you doing? And Minato's just kind of like, he's like, what did you do? You made a change. And he's like, yeah, it was getting annoying, so I cut it. And he's like, oh, it feels a bit strange, which means that, it feels a bit strange because we've known each other for a bit. But he says, but having you as a coach, and then Kaito shuts him off because Kaito wants to Kaito just pushes him aside, just get out, plebeian. He's my coach. He's like, it's one hell of a surprise. And Masa's like, Masa clearly knows Kaito from the past and understands his wiliness and his kind of not arrogant, but his loud, abrasive ways. Masa's used to it, and he's kind of like, no, I can handle this. So I wonder if Tommy-sensei tried to talk him into it because he knew that, maybe? I don't know. He's like, I thought you were taking a break from archery. And Minato's like, a break? And he's like, oh, I did take a break for a little while. He's like, I did take a break, but I'm back in business now, though. And so they're like, oh, you're back in business. Oh, you took a break. And then they both look at each other like, what is this business? What are you two? Yeah, it's all very complicated. I'm a newbie coach, though. So yeah, he's like the guy, you know, when you're in a competition and you're in a competitive sport and you play it all throughout high school and then you take a break and then you come back to coach it or come back to teach it. That's kind of a position I'm in right now. And so it is a weird feeling being a newbie coach. You're just like, I don't know how to handle you ruffians, but we're going to do it, right? And he's like, would you be Nanao? So yeah, so Kaito clearly has talked to Masa about Nanao in the past, and now he's meeting him face to face. And Nanao doesn't do the murcha, he does the haya. He's like, Kachan told me all about you, Masa-san. And he's like, nothing good, I'm sure. And then Kaito's like, it was though! Kaito got it bad. Kaito is like, he's like, it was all good things. He thinks Masa's amazing. And Masa's like, oh. And so then Seiya introduces himself as Takahaya Seiya, the president. He's like, okay, cool. He's like, but I don't feel comfortable being called sensei, so just call me Masa-san or Taki-san. Anything along those lines. Ryohei misses no beats. Ryohei's like, okay, Masa-san. You don't have to tell him twice to be informal. Ryohei's like, I don't do this fuddy-duddy formalities. Let's just cut the brass tacks and get to it. Yamanouchi, Ryohei. Very cool. And he's like, well, hey, Ryohei. And they're about the same height. They're both pretty tall. Yeah, so he's just like, looking all suave and debonair here. Being like, okay, let's start. Cool beans. And so then we get our intro. All right. And cut back. So this episode's called A Poor Fit, which is referring to that the teamwork on this team is a bit sloppy so far, which, you know, for sports anime, surprising nobody, they don't all get along. There's dissent amongst the ranks. And so they need to all work together, right? And so, of course, Kaito is, like, first to tell him, like, we need to, like, sharpen our skills. And, you know, he's like, this is how we do things, Masa-san. Like, he wants to take charge. He's like, is that okay? And he's like, it's fine by me. And I love that Tommy-sensei's like, there's food in the teacher's lounge. I got a meeting to go to. You got this, right? I feel like Tommy-sensei's like, I ain't dealing with these hooligans. I'm too old for this. You do it, you youngin'. He's like, thanks for coming. Bye. I'm gonna go get the food. And then, yeah, I like that. What I like about this episode is it takes its time and really draws out the kind of serenity and calm of the sport. Because it honestly, for being a sports anime, I can just see the comments in the comment section of somebody being like, this is boring. They're just firing an arrow and taking 30 seconds to do so. But it's so calming and chill, and there's an art form to it. It's beautiful. And it's like all about this like quiet, serene moment and shooting it. Like there's just something kind of mystical about it. It almost seems ethereal, right? That I really enjoyed that with this episode, that it took its time. And then realizing, like, I was like, oh, are we already halfway through? Oh my gosh. Like it makes the time go slower, but somehow it speeds by. It's crazy. So Masa's on to the fact that Minato is still a bit hesitant. He's like, what are you stalling for? And Minato's like, I'm not stalling, but it's clear that he's still a bit paranoid about going up there and shooting. And he's like, well, aren't you though? And it makes Minato blush. He's like, I'm not stalling for time. And so Masa's like, but you are. And he's gotten better, right? I was afraid he was instantly going to fire the arrow and take it off, but he actually gets it's not bad. He misses the target, but by barely. He's like, you did a lot better than you did in practice. And he says, I'm still awful though. And he's like, just be patient. And I like that Kaito's like, well, they're all being buddy over there. And so, again, subverting tropes with sports anime. When Seiya asked Kaito, he's like, well, you seem pretty well acquainted with the new coach Inogi. He's like, you know, how do you guys know? Kaito just says it's none of your business. Not a word, right? Not a word. That aligns perfectly with Kaito's personality, because why would he tell Seiya? They barely know each other. But I just like that you expect it's going to go into this big... I expected like maybe Nanao to give information about Kaito and his backstory, but we haven't got there yet. But no, Seiya's like, so backstory? And Kaito's like, no, I don't want to. And it's like, okay. Now, Nanao may talk about them later. We don't know. He's like, that's true, I suppose. And Kaito's like, So did Narumiya didn't tell you. And so then Kaito asks the same thing back to Seiya. He's like, well, how about Narumiya? How does he know Masa? And Seiya's like, I don't know. He's like, did Masa-sensei tell you about his connection with him? And then I like the Kaito goes, it's hilarious. You two act like besties, but you don't know a single thing about him. And Kaito, I love the expression of how they animate him. They animate his face. He's just like, really? He's like, you guys are just be best friends, but you don't know all this stuff about each other. The way that they animate Kaito in this scene is really, really good. And his expressions are like just kind of really vivid and just varied in this scene. But yeah, that's a good point. Seiya wants to be really good friends with Minato, but they just don't know each other very well. They've drifted apart, right? And Kaito's kind of calling him out on it. And Seiya's like, what a shock. Seiya is savage. Seiya, you cannot, sticks and stones will not break Seiya's bones, and neither will words, because as soon as Kaito gets done, he's like, well, I never expected you to say the word besties, Onogi. Like, just completely shrugs off the insult. And Kaito's just like, I can't deal with you. It's great. He's just a grumpy cat. Mm-hmm. So from there, it shows Kaito like just ordering them and bossing them around to get the targets ready. And so, yeah, Kaito wants everything to be perfect for Masa. Like, he wants everything to just be so because he wants to impress Masa and show that he's like a leader and he's like the captain of all. And Kaito is very much taking the reins of like the captain of the team. Even though Seiya is the club president, Kaito wants to appear to be the most competent. And so I love that the girls are just sitting there like, wow, I did not take Onogi for being fussy. And then Yuna's like, he's like a mother-in-law. And Nanao's like, Nanao's like, oh my gosh. And it's almost as if Nanao tries to like defend Kaito, but then he also kind of insults him at the same time. He's like, oh, he's very you missed a spot type of person, right? And they all giggle and Kaito's like, I am not. It's really cute. But yeah, and then Tommy-sensei shows up, new bolo, new cardigan. Masa shows up, skinny jeans, denim shirt, looking good, just a regular Tuesday. And so he's like, I can hear you shouting from all the way outside, Kaito. And Kaito's like, well, it's not my fault that they don't listen. I'm not shouting because I wanna. And Tommy-sensei's like, oh my gosh, you kiddos. And so talking about mutual understanding, the heart of Kyudo is teamwork after all. Which is interesting because I kind of had the same thoughts as Kaito at first. Being like, when Kaito's like, what? He's like, what are you talking about, Tommy-sensei? And he's like, teamwork. But it's a totally solo sport. So yeah, that's a really good point. That I thought Kyudo was kind of like just a group of individuals, right? Kind of like Free, very much like Free in swimming. They each have their own individual medleys, but when they all compete as a team, is it gonna be like the relays? Is the power of the Nakama? Are they gonna be represented by animals, and then we're gonna get to see them firing one arrow after the other? Can we do that? Will the Tsurune take the form of an animal that will chase each other through the air, much like the animal spirits in the swimming pool chase after one another? I'd be all about that. We should do that. But yeah, I was with Kaito. I thought that it was a solo sport. There wasn't any like teamwork involved. And then Masa, I love that Masa comes over and gives Kaito head pats. He's like, the things that Tommy-sensei is going to tell you are important. Remember that, Kaito. And he calls him by his first name. He calls him on a first name basis, right? Like they know each other personally. And Kaito's just like, and of course Kaito has a little blush where he's like, Kaito definitely is like totally all about Masa-san. So we get back to this scene. So we have like this fortress that Nanao's playing. Maybe said that because we're in a group competition. So this is interesting. I guess maybe Nanao and Kaito are cousins. Maybe they're related because the banter they have in this episode, the back and forth, kind of lends you to believe that they might be related. It's very much like family banter. And Nanao being over at Kaito's house, just sitting on his bed like it's nothing. Okay. With Lucy playing his game. But I like that Kaito, for all of his tsundere attitude, he very much cares. Because he's the one that points out that Nanao had the injury on his hand from the bowstrings. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, the bowstrings like rubbing up against the arm. That would hurt. That would really hurt. That'd be like a rug burn. It'd be like, ugh. He's like, the objectivity is what makes Kyoto great. And he says, it sounds to me like you're sulking because Masa is looking at other people besides you. And he slaps her. He's like, ah! So yeah, Masa has kind of been monopolized by Kaito all these years. He wouldn't even let Nanao go see him. And now it's like, well, now someone else is also seeing him. And the thing about Kaito is Kaito is a very serious person, and he's very open about his deliberateness and his ambition. Like, Kaito is very vocal about being serious about archery. He's been that way since episode 1. And he calls Minato an airhead because Minato doesn't speak. Minato doesn't communicate like Kaito does. So to Kaito, he just sees Minato as like an airhead, like a ditz. Like, his head's in the clouds, he's not even thinking of anything. But the reality is that Minato's just kind of introverted. And he's not a vocal person, not like Kaito is. I also like that Kaito just has a first aid kit in his closet. Just has it ready to go. And I love he's just like, that ain't it. Like, he's whenever Nanao calls him out, he's like such a grumpy cat. And Nanao's like, dude, you are. He's like, hey, Lucy, your master's such a mess, isn't he? He's like, she doesn't like it when you do that. I love that Kaito's such a cat person. He likes cats and he likes music. So we get their bedrooms. He has like the guitar posters and music everywhere. So he likes music. He likes cats. We're getting that information about Kaito. Oh, what he doesn't like is an airhead that doesn't think about anything. But the thing of it is, I think Kaito befriended Ryohei, who is maybe an airhead. So I was like, Kaito, you befriended like the most likely to be an airhead on the team, but you think Minato is one? Okay. I feel like Kaito and Minato need to like have a heart-to-heart and open up to each other and find that mutual understanding. But I am glad to see Minato, like when he makes the dinner for his dad, he's like humming, and he does seem like he's excited about something. Like he's excited to have Masa as a coach and to be on the team with him. So, and the dad notices, like, you seem like you're in good spirits. You were humming. And Minato's like, oh, no, I wasn't. And he's like, yeah, you were. You were seeming like you were normal again. And then Seiya shows up. This part's really interesting, the whole thing with Seiya. Seiya with Kuma. It was a little manipulative. I felt bad for Kuma. I'm glad Kuma made Seiya take him for a walk. So I'm like, you just want to walk 2 feet over to get to, worm your way in to see Minato because Minato likes Kuma. Okay. But no. The interesting thing is I like the visual representation in this scene because you have the dad opening up the door and looking at them, and there is a clear divide. There is a clear gate, a wall between Seiya and Minato and his father. There's a clear divide there. There's a barrier. I think that Seiya was trying to like get Minato to go on a walk with him when he was home, thinking that his dad wasn't at home, or he was trying to find a way to worm his way into the residence so he could talk to Minato and find out maybe how he knew Masa, but he just doesn't succeed because the dad's already home. So what do? He's like, oh, you're home early. He says, I managed for once. And he's like, oh, no, I'm not here for Minato. And he's like, he's like, did you finish tomorrow's homework yet? And Minato's like, no. So yeah, he clearly, that's not what he was there for. He just didn't have anything else to say. He didn't want to say it in front of their dad. So interesting. And the dad gets it. The dad's like, he needs to talk to you about something. And Minato's like, I don't know what. He's like, I have no clue. No idea. And Seiya's just like, well, that plan failed. But I'm glad that Kuma makes him go back and take care of him. So then we get Kaito like trying to help Ryohei and get the string ready. And I like in this episode that we have like all the fundamentals of the tournament, like how the equipment works, all of that. And he's just like, here's how you do it. And Kaito is kind of pushy, right? And Seiya calls him out. He's like, don't do that to a beginner. Don't rush a beginner because they could likely get hurt. And they're like, Ryohei, watch your bow, because he smacks, Minato over the head and causes him to have like a near concussion. Not really, but Seiya's like, please don't injure him. We really don't need him in hospital. Watch when you're holding a bow. And of course, Ryohei takes it the worst way. He's like, I'm so sorry. Like, Ryohei thinks it's the end of the world, right? And I just love that they're all bickering and these girls are like staring at them from across the room like, what do we do with them? And so then Masa says they're going to have a mock tournament. a group of 5 and have Tommy-sensei. It's great. And so they call Tommy-sensei an Oni, which I thought Oni meant like a demon. Isn't that it? Like he was a demon archer, which I'm sure he was back in the day. But Masa's like, we can take you guys. Which I kind of like that because that means Masa maybe thinks that the girls are competent. They're like, no, we can take them. It's fine. But the episode being called A Poor Fit. Tommy's back feels better. It's great. Of course, Kaito is instantly like, let's do this tournament. And then from there, they're like, we'll do girls versus boys. And everybody else is in. Now, Kaito wanted to be on I feel like Kaito thought it was going to be like dodgeball, where you pick the teams, and Kaito was going to be like, I picked Masa-san. But no, they had it already preordained, pre-set up. So they asked them to figure out the firing order. And he's like, you have 5 minutes. Figure it out. And they're like, oh. He's like, okay, start your deliberations, go. And they figure it out like instantly. They already know who's going to go. And they ask, what does Oni Archer mean? He's stronger than Oni. That was a long time ago. They're like, tell us your stories. And he's like, what is this? So Kaito does not understand the point of mixing it up and doing this mock tournament. He doesn't get the point of doing it. And so they established that Tommy was an Oni Archer, so he was one of the ones to finish it up and end the match, which is interesting. So Nanao gets his attention back to the group, and they have to figure out who's going to be what. I do like the little animation of like when Kaito like shoves him away and Nanao spins back into the group. So in how we determine the firing order while Kaito and him are wrestling over here, usually the advisor chooses. I have a feeling Masa is going to make them choose their order at every tournament. I have a feeling he's going to do that. Like, maybe you should decide for now, Seiya. Maybe we should just draw lots. And they're like, Kachan's really bad at drawing lots. They don't want to cause resentment. So they're trying to figure out a democratic way to do this. And they're like, maybe we should let people nominate themselves. Is there anyone who wants to be the Ome and go first? And Ryohei's like, nope, don't want to start. And then Kaito acknowledges that the Ome is a very important position, which at Nationals in middle school, we saw that Minato was an Ome position. So he clearly was thought to be like the person that was the most important to start with. And so then from there, like the Ome really stands out. And then Nanao's like, I'll do it and I'll go first. And Ryohei goes second. He's like, no, I'll notice if I screw up. And they're like, you're a fast learner, Ryohei. And then Kaito's like, well, it's better than Minato. Oh my gosh. And they're just bickering back and forth. And I like that Masa's just over here being like, you boys, figure it out. Come on. I like it. So he makes the bet that whoever loses has to be the servant and do whatever the other person wants to. And so they end up finally picking up who's going to do what. And they get ready and start. So we have these positions, right? We have the Ome. And the Ome seems to not only go first, but they kind of set the bar. They start the entire tradition and get the flow of the group going. So the Ome kind of is the one that is the leader, right? And enters the hall. So they're kind of the leader position. Okay. And then afterwards, the person that goes after them, they just start with the same movement and the same position, right? So they get everybody set up. They said the order in which you fire is called Tachijun. So you have Tachijun. All right, and that is the order. Order of fire. Okay. So the Ome is first and starts that. And I like that we see that we see their different bows. Of course, Kaito has the long bow, right? Seiya's bow looks like it's black. Minato's is like a reddish oak color. Ryohei's is like a dark brown. I like that Nanao's bow is like a yellow, like a light wood. And so we have the Ome. Then we have the Niteki. The Niteki, which is second. So for here we had Nanao. Nanao took the lead, and then Ryohei. And then we have the Naka. The Baka Naka. And the Naka is third, and that is Minato. you know, not fueling my ship or anything, but Fujiwara was the third person back in middle school, so there's that. And then the Yawn Techie, which is fourth. And that's Seiya. All right. And then we have finally the Ochi. Okay, it's not the Oni. The last shooter is the Ochi. And that is Kaito. Okay. So got our 5 guys. And so the Ome finishes, what do they call that? They call it, when he finishes his, then the Techie stands up. When he finishes Dozu Curry. So we have this term called Dozu Curry. And that means choosing his stance and position. So that is where you choose your stance. How are you going to stand when you fire? Okay, so when he gets up to do that, that is when the other person steps up to start their own turn. And then the moment you stand up before they finish getting their stance in line. And then in order, when you hear the Tsurune from the person before you, you raise your bow and take firing stance. So apparently you do that 4 times. So they're going to do that 4, you do that 4 times. Okay. And apparently sometimes there are time limits and you don't want to do it too fast or overtake the person before you. So that would be, okay. That would be where it would be a bit more difficult if you had target panic, like what Minato's saying, because if you are standing up and getting ready, you have to get ready and you have to fire once the other person's arrow has released. So if you have target panic and you fire it too soon, you'll probably get penalized. So yeah, that would be, you would think you'd want Minato up front if that were the case, but, and so we have what everybody's thinking, and Minato is thinking servants, if we have to be servants. And Seiya is like, is this another plan of Takigawa-san's? So yeah, Seiya's, like, Minato's worried about, like, the bread and butter, like, we have to be servants if we lose. But Seiya's going, what is the purpose of this? What is he doing? What is Masa-san's plans? And then Kaito is thinking, why do I have to play against Masa-san? I hate this crappy team. Kaito saying that he hates the team is so sad. It's like, no, Kaito, you're supposed to love the Nakama. Kaito's not feeling the Nakama. It's like, no, honey, you can't like this team. It's okay. No. And Masa's just like, this is all intentional, right? And then the girls' team goes, and of course, Tommy-sensei is amazing. And Kaito's like, And then Masa hits the bullseye. And they all just stare at him. Like his form and everything. And I love that Minato sees him in that moment, because Minato's like, you've had target practice and have struggled through it, target panic and have struggled through it, and you just hit a bullseye. So it's possible, right? It's very, very possible. And the blush on Minato's face, oh. But yeah, so the results, after firing 4 times, the boys team had 7 hits. Yikes. And the girls team had 13 hits. So not great. Still, because they had like what? They had 4, and then they had 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 8, 10. So out of 40 hits, we only had 20. We're 50%. I guess that's decent. I guess that's fine. It's okay, but yikes. So yeah, Masa and, let me see here, what we got here. Takigawa and Morioka. So the 2 teachers hit all 4 targets, okay? And then Hanazawa, let me see, Hanazawa was Yuna. She didn't hit any. Shiragiku hit 2. Seiya hit 3, so that was pretty good. And then Onogi, let me see here, Onogi only hit 1? Takahaya hit 4, so Seiya hit 4. Okay. And then Ryohei and Naramiya hit none, and Kisaragi hit 2. Okay, so Seiya technically did just as good as the captains. Okay, they did just as good, but the girls and them as a whole did better. Okay, so basically Seiya was the best out of all of them, and then the girl Seiyo, she was next. And then we had Shiragiku and Nanao both tied, and then Kaito, and then Yuna along with Ryohei and Narumiya didn't hit any. So that's surprising. I figured Kaito would do better, but he's flustered. So that's probably what happened. But I figured he would have done better. But Seiya hitting all 4. Interesting. Seiya's proving himself as an archer. I love that he gave them all servant clothes. And then we see them all like the next day with the little tiny scythes to cut the weeds. Oh my god. And their shirts say servant. Amazing. And they have like a little Luffy straw hat. Amazing. And the matching like sweatpants. It's great. And so I love that when Kaito gets mad and starts like smack talking Minato, and Seiya like raises a little scythe. He's like, was that a personal attack? And Minato's like, it's fine, I can defend myself. It's great. Seiya, I wouldn't mess with Seiya. Seiya would shank you in a dark alleyway and then let Kuma eat your bones. He wouldn't care. He's like, I still have target panic. It's fine. And Kaito says, you're playing the good guy, huh? And Nanao's like, well, you like to play the bad guy, Kacchan, so don't tell him that. So yeah, Nanao is pointing out that Kacchan and Minato just have like polar opposite personalities, and they're a poor fit together, which is the title of this episode. So yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, they end up like, I like Ryohei tries to be the peacekeeper, and Kaito's like, well, let's just do a rematch, and Masa's like, no, poor Morioka-sensei hurt his back again. He is not getting up and doing anything anytime soon. And Seiya says, how long are you going to keep up with this nonsense? Kaito and Minato like hang on Masa's every words and take him very seriously. Ryohei, we don't know too much about, and Nanao and Ryohei seem to have kind of like passive, like they just go along with Masa-san. They don't think ill of him. Seiya seems pretty critical of Masa. Like, what's the point? What are we doing? What's your relationship with Minato? Why is it like this? What's going on? Like, Seiya seems almost protective of the situation. And Masa's not fazed because he's an adult. Why would he be? But yeah, he's like, no, we're fine. He's like, just today and the 3-day weekend that we're going to have our training camp is when you'll be servants. And so Nanao's like, oh, I can't go. I have a date. And Masa's like, okay, you can go. And Nanao's like, you're not stopping me? And he's like, no, I'm not going to make you do it. And that's really smart, because that's really smart. He's like, it's voluntary. I won't force anyone to stay or go. And it makes Nanao feel guilty, right? But here's the thing. That can be the biggest motivation, because I help coach. I started helping to coach a speech team a few months ago. And that was one of the things the other coaches told me. They're like, if people don't want to do it, if they're not going to put in the time and effort, then it's not going to be worth it. So they have to want to be there and want to put in the work. So if they don't choose to come, then that's on them. And I feel like Masa has that same viewpoint. He's like, I could force you to go, but instead I want this to be a choice that you want to make. I want you to want to be there. So I'm going to leave it up to you. But Kaito and Minato are in. They're like, I want to participate. And then he's like, it'll be at the Kyudo Hall. That's my shrine. And then Seiya's like, well, if Minato's participating, I guess I will too, right? He joins in on it as well. And he's like, Morioka-sensei say pay free meals out of club dues. So it'll be fine. And I like that Ryohei's like, barbecue, please. I'm just putting in my order right now. Barbecue, that's what I want. He's so gung-ho. He's like, yes, that's what I'll do. I'm doing it for the food. And Nanao's like, I'll cancel my date. I'll stand her up. And so then, yeah, the girls are all like, do we deal with these idiots? I guess I'll probably be there. Let me talk to my parents, but I guess I'll show up to deal with these hooligans. And so, yeah, I do like this as Kaito is feeding Lucy his cat, which Lucy is adorable. This white cat with a little black tip tail. Freaking cute. And the end of her tail looks like not only like a little bullseye, but like a little arrowhead. Aw, so cute. But he's like, what's wrong, Lucy? Eat your food. Eat your food, Lucy! And then he gets the phone call. Now, Masa-san is on his phone, and his profile picture is the shrine entrance. So Kaito's been to the shrine entrance. He's been to the Kyudo Hall that is Masa's. And then, of course, Kaito's like, a favor. He says, come to the first day of training an hour early. Of course, we don't get to see Kaito's reaction when he sees Minato there as well. It's the both of them there. We don't get to see that reaction, but Kaito thinks he's getting special treatment. And his profile picture is his cat. Oh my god, it's so cute. And he's just, I love that he's just like, he's so like texting Masa. I'm like, oh my. Kaito got it bad. So he shows up and we see the brother, Rin, taking photos of the shrine and of the archery hall. We see him doing all of that, right? And then of course, Kaito thinks it's like a stalker or somebody trespassing. It's like, oh my gosh, what are we even doing? And so then we get this scene with them putting on the robes. So he says the Yawatashi is like the special robe before a tournament. He says that'll speed things up. And so he says, do we need to do the whole ritual? He says, yes, of course we do. It's a training camp. And so he asks if it's his kimono. He says, no, it's my grandfather's. So I'm guessing the kimonos that he's giving both Kaito and Minato are like his grandfathers or his families, which is interesting. And then Minato asks about him. He says he's passed now, though. And I thought that was a really cool connection because Minato in that moment realizes that Masa has lost someone as well. So he knows what it's like to grieve the loss of someone. So it feels like in that moment, Masa and Minato maybe make a connection without even realizing it because Minato has not told Masa about his mom, but he sees that connection in that moment. And he says, Masa-san, why did you tell me to go back? He said, you didn't tell me to join the Kyudo club. You just told me to go back. And the answer is probably because Masa knows exactly what Minato has been through. And he saw himself in Minato and was like, look, I know what you're running from. Just go back to it. I mean, what else is there to be said? And okay, the part where he strings the ribbon across Minato, the front of the kimono, and like leans over and puts his head on his shoulder. He's like, well, it's because. I was like, is this why y'all ship? Is this why you're all ship Minato and Masa? Because it is, granted, a very tender moment. Kaito ruins it by coming in with the guy. I found a weirdo lurker. And then he's like, oh, hey, hold on. I know what you're thinking, but it's a misunderstanding. That is totally my bro. That's my big brother. And he's like, I can kind of see it. I see it in their faces. Their hair is just totally different. Clearly, I don't think his brother does archery or Kyudo. This is my big brother, Rin. And they're like, and he's like, oh my god. He's like, yeah, that's right. It's my bro. And oh, we see the owl. Who? Sitting there on the tree. He says, I slipped a disc once, so I totally get you. So I wonder if the older brother doesn't do archery because he injured himself. Maybe. Sports anime going to sports anime with all these injuries. And he's like, no matter how many times I go through it, it's hellish. Interesting. And so yeah, I like the one girl, Shigaraku. She's like, big brother. She like leans over to Nanao and he's like, I know. He's like, Masa-san said so, but they don't look anything alike. I love that there's like them gossiping there. And so then they come in formally, Masa along with Kaito and Minato. And Tommy-sensei stands up first, like to get ready. So we prepare this training camp to pray for the safety and well-being of all during this period. So interestingly, I was like, does Masa have to shoot the arrow at where Minato is sitting and it's supposed to miss him and that's supposed to be the sign that it's time to go? What are we doing there? And then of course he like pulls off. Kiwani's like, we're gonna make him pull off that kimono so we get the Yawatashi, a ritual firing of an arrow before a meet or a tournament. To like pray for good fortune. For the safety of the archers. Okay. And I love just how serious Masa is in that moment. Him drawing his bow and just drawing it back, and it's so serious. And you see, like, as he's leaning forward, like, every muscle, every contour, everything. Yep. I'm all about an adult of adult characters, and Masa, much like Nanami Kento in Jujutsu Kaisen, he's doing it. Indeed. And he says, if the god of archery really does exist, I'm sure he's watching Masa-san right now. oof, maybe he'll smile on me someday too. That's what I thought about in that moment. And then we don't get to find out what happens next. And we hear the Tsurune. And we don't get to find out anything more. Boo! These episodes go by too fast, too quickly. So my question is, we have Ome, Nateki, Naka, Yonteki, and Ochi. We've seen them take these positions for the mock tournament, but I feel like those were just spare of the moment, last minute ones. The only one they really decided on were the first two, because Nanao volunteered and Ryohei was like, I'm going to get it over with. So the question is, are these going to be the positions they take at an actual tournament or not? So that's going to be what we have to find out in the next episode and see where we go from there. But I'm curious to know about the rest of this training camp, why Rin is taking photos there. Is the photos like for promotional stuff for the Kyudo team? Is it to promote the shrine? Why are we doing it? There's some mystery there, as you would expect from Masa, but I'm very curious to see what all we're going to be doing with that in this series. So I'm also curious to know your thoughts down below. So I hope you all enjoyed this reaction, but this was a lot of fun, and I'm excited for episode 5. Don't know if I'm going to be able to wait a week. But I'll probably wait at least until episodes 2 and 3 come out on Patreon and YouTube to get y'all's feedback. So in any case, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Tsurune. Bye.